What Navy mechanic Ray Mitchell uncovers behind the sealed hatch of a decommissioned submarine doesn't just solve the decades-old mystery of the USS Cyclops. It challenges everything we thought we knew about the Bermuda Triangle and puts the U.S. Navy at the center of a scientific discovery that could change how we understand reality itself. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Ray Mitchell stood at the edge of the dry dock, watching storm clouds gather over the Naval Shipyard in Norfolk, Virginia. The biting winter wind cut through his worn Navy-issue jacket as he surveyed the massive submarine that had been his home for 6 years. The USS Barracuda, once the pride of the American submarine fleet, its advanced sonar and stealth capabilities making it the envy of naval forces worldwide, was now just another decommissioned vessel awaiting dismantling. The sleek black hull of the nuclear submarine still commanded respect, despite the scaffolding that surrounded it like a metal exoskeleton. After 15 years of service patrolling the depths of the world's oceans, the Barracuda had been retired as part of the Navy's modernization program. Ray, as the submarine's senior mechanical engineer, had been tasked with overseeing the final systems shutdown and preparing the vessel for its eventual dismantling. She deserved better than this, Ray muttered to himself, eyeing the massive crane that loomed over the submarine like a predator. Each day brought the Barracuda closer to oblivion, as workers methodically stripped away the advanced systems that had once made it one of the most sophisticated machines ever built. For Ray, the submarine represented more than just military hardware. The son and grandson of Navy men, he had practically salt water in his veins. His father had served on ballistic missile submarines during the Cold War, while his grandfather had been part of the submarine force that had helped win the Pacific Theater in World War II. Ray had continued that legacy, enlisting straight out of high school and distinguishing himself quickly for his uncanny ability to understand and repair the most complex mechanical systems. But now, at 34, Ray was facing the end of an era. The Barracuda's decommissioning coincided with his own decision to leave the Navy after 15 years of service. The endless deployments had taken their toll on his marriage, contributing to a divorce 3 years earlier. His teenage daughter, Sophie, now lived with her mother in San Diego, seeing her father only during his infrequent shore leaves. "Thinking about civilian life?" asked a voice behind him. Ray turned to see Commander James Harris, the Barracuda's former captain, approaching along the dock. At 52, Harris still carried himself with the rigid posture of a career naval officer, though his recent retirement had softened some of the edges. The lines around his eyes spoke of years squinting at sonar readings in the dim light of a submarine control room. "Just saying goodbye, sir," Ray replied, straightening instinctively despite Harris no longer being his commanding officer. Old habits died hard in the Navy. They're starting on the forward compartments tomorrow. Harris nodded, his gaze fixed on the submarine. 15 years. She was a good boat. In typical Navy understatement, this was high praise indeed. "What's next for you, Mitchell? I heard you turned down the instructor position at Groton." Ray shrugged, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Still figuring that out, sir. Got some job offers from defense contractors, but..." He trailed off, unsure how to explain his reluctance. The money would be good, very good, but something held him back from committing to a lifetime of designing weapons systems. "But it doesn't feel right," Harris finished for him, surprising Ray with his perception. "I understand. Took me 6 months after retirement to figure out what I wanted to do next." He paused, studying Ray's face. "Listen, Mitchell, before they strip her completely, I'd like you to check something for me." "Inside?" Ray raised an eyebrow. The Barracuda had been officially sealed once the reactor had been defueled and removed. Only the decommissioning crew had authorization to enter, and only specific compartments according to the dismantling schedule. Sir? Harris glanced around, ensuring they weren't overheard. There's a compartment in the aft section, beneath the backup electrical systems. It's not on any of the official schematics. He handed Ray a small key with a non-standard design. This opens a panel that looks like part of the bulkhead. I need you to retrieve something before the cutting crews reach that section. Ray stared at the key in his palm, questions flooding his mind. In 15 years serving on submarines, he'd never encountered a secret compartment. Every cubic inch of a submarine was accounted for, mapped, and monitored. The idea of a space that didn't officially exist violated everything he knew about naval protocols. Sir, I don't understand. If there's a compartment that isn't on the schematics, I know what you're thinking. Mitchell, Harris interrupted, his voice dropping further. I'm not asking you to do anything that compromises national security. Quite the opposite, in fact. What's in that compartment needs to be secured before the civilian contractors discover it. He met Ray's confused gaze directly. This isn't just about the Barracuda. It's about something much older. Before Ray could press for more details, Harris stepped back, his demeanor shifting to a more public persona as a group of workers walked past. Think about that instructor position, Mitchell. The Navy needs good men training the next generation. With a meaningful look, he added, I'll call you tomorrow for your decision. As Harris walked away, Ray closed his fingers around the strange key, feeling as though he'd just been handed much more than a piece of metal. 15 years in the Navy had taught him to follow orders, but it had also taught him to trust his instincts. And right now, those instincts were sending mixed signals. The storm that had been threatening all morning finally arrived as Ray made his way to the security checkpoint at the entrance to the dry dock area. Fat raindrops pelted the concrete as he showed his credentials and explained he was doing a final systems check in the aft compartments. His senior status and the fact that he'd been overseeing the decommissioning process meant the guards waved him through without question. Inside the submarine, the atmosphere had changed dramatically from when it was an active vessel. The usual hum of machinery was absent, replaced by an eerie silence. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim, reddish glow, making the familiar corridors seem alien. The heart of the submarine, the nuclear reactor, had been removed weeks earlier, leaving the vessel dependent on external power sources for basic functions. Ray moved through the narrow passageways with the practiced efficiency of someone who could navigate them blindfolded. Every submarine followed basically the same layout: command and control systems forward, living quarters and galley amidships, engineering and propulsion aft. The Barracuda had been his home for so long that he felt each turn and ladder in his muscles before his mind even registered the decision to move. As he reached the engineering section, Ray became more cautious. This area had already been partially stripped, with large components removed and systems disconnected. Wires hung from open panels, and the deck was littered with the detritus of dismantling cable ties, insulation, and the occasional forgotten tool. The backup electrical systems compartment was a cramped space tucked behind the main engineering bay. Ray had spent countless hours here during his service, troubleshooting issues and performing maintenance. He knew every inch of it, or so he had thought. Following Harris's cryptic instructions, Ray examined the aft bulkhead carefully. At first glance, it appeared completely normal, gray metal with the standard riveting pattern and conduit attachments. But as he ran his fingers along the seams, he noticed a subtle difference in one section. The rivets here were slightly different in pattern from the standard Navy specifications. What the hell? He muttered, pressing against different sections of the bulkhead. After several minutes of careful examination, he found what he was looking for: a small, nearly invisible seam in the metal. It was so well disguised that someone would have to know exactly what they were looking for to notice it. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Ray inserted the key Harris had given him into what appeared to be a standard electrical junction box. Instead of opening the box, however, the key slid deeper than should have been possible. When he turned it, he heard a faint click from within the bulkhead. A section of the wall, approximately 3 feet square, recessed slightly and then slid to the side, revealing a darkened space beyond. Heart pounding, Ray reached for his flashlight. The beam revealed a small compartment, perhaps 4 feet deep and 3 feet wide. It contained a single metal case, roughly the size of a briefcase, secured to the deck with heavy brackets. The case bore no identifying marks, no Navy insignia, no serial number, nothing to indicate what it might contain. "This can't be regulation," Ray whispered to himself as he examined the securing mechanism. Whatever this case contained, someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to keep it hidden and secure. After several minutes of careful manipulation, he managed to release the brackets and lift the case. It was surprisingly heavy, perhaps 30 pounds, with a solid construction that suggested serious protection for its contents. Ray hesitated, debating whether to open the case immediately or follow Harris's instructions and simply remove it from the submarine. Curiosity warred with his ingrained respect for the chain of command. In the end, naval discipline won out. Harris had asked him to retrieve the case, not examine its contents. Securing the case under his arm, Ray was about to close the hidden compartment when something caught his eye, a small leather-bound book wedged into a recess at the back of the hidden space. He reached in and retrieved it, finding what appeared to be a personal journal. The cover was unmarked, but the pages were filled with handwritten notes in fading ink. The sound of voices from the main engineering bay snapped Ray back to the present. The decommissioning crew wasn't scheduled to be in this section today, but plans changed frequently as the dismantling process evolved. Quickly, Ray closed the secret compartment, watching as it seamlessly reintegrated with the bulkhead, leaving no trace of its existence. With the case and journal secured in his work bag, Ray made his way back through the submarine, not into the workers who had arrived to continue stripping the forward sections. His mind raced with questions about what he had found and why Harris had entrusted him with retrieving it. The rain had intensified by the time Ray reached his truck in the personnel parking lot. He placed the case and journal carefully on the passenger seat, covering them with his jacket. As he started the engine, his phone rang. Commander Harris. "Mitchell," Ray answered, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Did you find it?" Harris asked without preamble. "Yes, sir." "And something else, a journal of some kind." There was a pause on the line. "Good. The journal wasn't supposed to be there, but it might help explain things. Bring everything to this address." Harris recited an address in Virginia Beach, about 30 minutes from the shipyard. "Come alone and make sure you weren't followed." The line went dead before Ray could ask any of the dozens of questions swirling in his mind. He sat for a moment, rain drumming on the roof of his truck, contemplating the strangeness of the situation. In 15 years of naval service, he'd never been involved in anything remotely clandestine. His work had always been straightforward, if technically complex, keep the submarine's mechanical systems functioning optimally. The drive to Virginia Beach took longer than expected due to the worsening storm. Coastal Virginia was prone to sudden, violent weather, and this system had intensified into a significant nor'easter. By the time Ray pulled up to the address Harris had given him, a modest beachfront cottage set back from the road, the wind was howling and waves were crashing against the shoreline with impressive force. Ray parked next to Harris's familiar SUV and made a dash for the front porch, the case and journal protected inside his waterproof bag. Before he could knock, the door swung open to reveal Commander Harris and an elderly man Ray didn't recognize. "Come in quickly," Harris urged, ushering Ray inside and securing the door behind him. "Mitchell, this is Admiral Thomas Caldwell, retired." The elderly man nodded in acknowledgement, his piercing blue eyes examining Ray with evident interest. "So you're Mitchell," Caldwell said, his voice surprisingly strong for a man who appeared to be well into his 80s. "Harris speaks highly of your mechanical aptitude. And your discretion." The way he emphasized the last word made it clear that discretion was the more valued quality at the moment. The cottage's interior was sparsely furnished but comfortable, with large windows facing the turbulent ocean. A fire burned in the stone fireplace, casting dancing shadows across walls decorated with naval memorabilia, photographs of submarines, framed commendations, and nautical charts of the Atlantic. "You found the case," Harris said, gesturing to Ray's bag. Ray nodded, removing the metal case and journal. "Yes, sir. And this was wedged in the compartment as well." He placed both items on a sturdy oak coffee table. Admiral Caldwell leaned forward, his weathered hands reaching for the journal with evident recognition. "Lawrence's log," he murmured, almost to himself. "I thought it had been destroyed." "Sir," Ray began, unable to contain his questions any longer, "what is all this?" "Secret compartments aren't exactly standard on Navy vessels." Harris and Caldwell exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, Harris nodded and turned to Ray. "What I'm about to tell you isn't officially acknowledged by the Navy or any other branch of government," he began, his tone grave. "What you found today connects directly to one of the greatest maritime mysteries of the last century." Caldwell opened the journal carefully, its pages brittle with age. "This belongs to Captain Lawrence Mercer of the USS Cyclops," he said, watching Ray's face for recognition. Ray felt a chill that had nothing to do with his rain-soaked clothes. Every sailor knew the story of the USS Cyclops, a massive Navy collier that had disappeared without a trace in 1918 while crossing the area known as the Bermuda Triangle. The ship and its 309 crew members had vanished completely, no distress call, no wreckage, nothing. It remained the single largest loss of life in a non-combat incident in U.S. naval history. "That's impossible," Ray said automatically. "The Cyclops disappeared over 100 years ago." "Yes, it did," Caldwell confirmed. "And yet, here is Captain Mercer's personal log, containing entries made after the ship supposedly vanished." He turned the journal toward Ray, revealing pages filled with increasingly frantic handwriting. Ray stared at the book, trying to process what he was being told. "Are you saying the Navy knows what happened to the Cyclops? That it's been covered up all this time?" "Not exactly," Harris replied. "The Navy doesn't know what happened to the Cyclops, at least, not officially. What the Navy does know is that in 1945, a submarine on patrol near Puerto Rico detected an anomalous sonar reading at a depth where no natural feature should exist." Caldwell picked up the narrative. "I was a junior officer on that submarine. We were ordered to investigate the reading. What we found was—" He paused, seeming to search for adequate words. "Well, it was the Cyclops or parts of it, but not as wreckage on the seafloor. The ship appeared to be intersecting with reality, parts visible, parts not, as though it existed in more than one place at once." Ray looked between the two men, wondering if this was some elaborate test or joke. But their expressions remained deadly serious. "That's not physically possible," he said finally. "Under normal circumstances, no," Harris agreed. "But the area now known as the Bermuda Triangle isn't normal. The Navy has been aware of spatial and temporal anomalies in that region since at least the Second World War. What's in that case, Mitchell, is the most comprehensive data ever collected on the phenomenon." Ray looked down at the metal case, suddenly understanding why it had been hidden so securely. "You're telling me the Navy has proof that the Bermuda Triangle is—" "What? Some kind of space-time distortion." "The Navy has evidence suggesting that certain areas of the Atlantic experience periodic disruptions in what we understand as normal physical laws," Caldwell corrected carefully. The case contains sensor readings, photographs, and physical samples collected over decades of classified research. But why hide it on the Barracuda? Ray asked, still struggling to accept what he was hearing. And why tell me about it now? Harris sat down across from Ray, his expression grave. The Barracuda wasn't the first vessel to carry this case. It's been transferred from submarine to submarine since 1945, always in secret, always under the direct authority of a very small group within naval intelligence. Each captain would choose one trusted crew member to ensure the transfer when the submarine was decommissioned. I was that crew member for the USS Seawolf in the 1980s, Caldwell added. Just as Harris was for the Los Angeles-class boat before the Barracuda. The program was officially terminated in 2010, Harris continued. Budget cuts, changing priorities, skepticism from new leadership. We were ordered to destroy all evidence of the research. Obviously, we didn't comply fully with that order. Ray sat back, feeling overwhelmed by the implications. So what happens now? What do you want from me? Caldwell leaned forward, his age-spotted hands clasped together. Something has changed, son. The anomalies are increasing in frequency and intensity. 3 civilian vessels have disappeared in the past 6 months. The Coast Guard investigations found nothing, but our own monitoring suggests they encountered the same phenomenon that took the Cyclops. Mitchell, Harris said, his voice dropping to near a whisper despite there being no one else to overhear. We believe something catastrophic is developing in the Triangle. The data suggests a potential large-scale event that could affect the entire eastern seaboard. And since the official program has been shut down, you need someone outside the chain of command to help, Ray concluded, beginning to understand his role in this extraordinary situation. Someone with the technical skills to understand the data, but without the connections that would raise flags if they started asking questions. Harris nodded. Precisely. Your decision to leave the Navy actually makes you ideal for this. You'll have freedom of movement that active-duty personnel wouldn't. Ray looked at the case and journal on the table, symbols of a mystery that had apparently been unfolding for over a century. Part of him wanted to walk away, to pretend he'd never found the hidden compartment. But a larger part, the part that had always been drawn to solving complex, mechanical problems, was already engaging with the puzzle. If what you're saying is true, he said slowly, and if there really is some kind of threat developing, then I need to understand exactly what I'm dealing with. He gestured to the case. Show me what's inside. Harris produced a key from his pocket different from the one that had opened the hidden compartment and inserted it into a nearly invisible lock on the side of the case. The mechanism clicked smoothly, suggesting regular maintenance despite its age. As Harris lifted the lid, Ray leaned forward, finally glimpsing the contents of the mysterious case he'd retrieved from the depths of the USS Barracuda. What he saw inside would forever change his understanding of the world and set him on a path toward confronting one of the greatest mysteries of the sea and potentially saving countless lives in the process. The storm outside intensified, waves crashing against the shore with increasing violence, as if the ocean itself was responding to the revelation of its long-held secrets. Inside the case, nestled in custom-fitted compartments, Ray saw an array of items that at first glance seemed incongruous. A collection of navigational instruments that appeared both antique and strangely modern. Glass vials containing what looked like seawater, but with unusual coloration. Folders of documents with classified markings so old the red ink had faded to rust. And most surprisingly, a device unlike anything Ray had ever encountered in his years of naval engineering, a spherical object about the size of a baseball, metallic but with an iridescent surface that seemed to shift colors as the angle of view changed. What is all this? Ray asked, reaching instinctively for the strange sphere before hesitating, uncertain if it was safe to touch. Evidence, Caldwell replied simply. And possibly the key to understanding what's happening in the Triangle. He nodded toward the sphere. That object was recovered from the partial wreckage of a research vessel in 1976. We still don't fully understand its composition or purpose, but it exhibits properties that defy conventional physics. Ray Mitchell carefully lifted the strange spherical object from the case, surprised by its unexpected lightness. Despite its metallic appearance, it felt hollow, yet there was a faint vibration against his fingertips, as if something within it was in constant motion. We've had physicists, engineers, and materials scientists examine it, Harris explained, watching Ray turn the sphere in his hands. Nobody can identify the metal, if it even is a metal. It doesn't match any known element on the periodic table. What happens if you try to cut into it? Ray asked, running his fingers over the seamless surface. Nothing, Caldwell replied. Diamond drills, laser cutters, even experimental particle beams, nothing leaves so much as a scratch. But that's not the most unusual property. He reached for the sphere, taking it gently from Ray's hands. Watch. The elderly admiral placed the sphere on the coffee table and took a small compass from his pocket. As he moved the compass toward the sphere, something extraordinary happened. The needle, which should have pointed steadfastly north, began to rotate wildly, spinning in complete circles with increasing speed. Electromagnetic anomaly? Ray suggested, his engineer's mind immediately seeking explanations. That would be a rational assumption, Harris agreed. But watch this. He retrieved a digital device from a drawer, a modern electromagnetic field detector of the type used by Navy, electronic warfare specialists. As he activated it near the sphere, the readings remained completely normal. That's impossible, Ray muttered, staring at the still spinning compass needle, while the EMF detector showed nothing unusual. It can't affect a mechanical compass without generating an electromagnetic field. Precisely, Caldwell said with grim satisfaction. This object appears to affect certain physical properties without interacting with others. It's as if it selectively engages with different aspects of reality. Ray sat back, struggling to reconcile what he was seeing with his understanding of physics. And this came from a wreck in the Triangle? Harris nodded, reopening the mysterious case. Along with these, he removed several glass vials containing what appeared to be seawater with unusual coloration, one with a faint bluish glow, another with an amber tint, and a third that seemed to contain tiny particles in constant motion, despite the vial remaining perfectly still. Water samples? Ray asked. Yes, collected from the exact coordinates where vessels disappeared, Caldwell confirmed. The molecular structure is inconsistent. Sometimes it appears to be normal H2O, but other times analysis shows molecular configurations that shouldn't be stable under Earth conditions. As Ray tried to process these revelations, Harris removed a thick folder from the case. This contains all the data we've collected over decades: sonar readings, magnetic anomalies, radiation measurements, witness accounts from the few who encountered anomalies and survived. And Captain Mercer's journal? Ray asked, glancing at the leather-bound book that supposedly belonged to the captain of the USS Cyclops. What does it tell us? Caldwell picked up the journal, his weathered fingers handling the fragile pages with practiced care. Lawrence Mercer was more than just a Navy captain. He had a background in theoretical physics, unusual for naval officers of his time. His observations are disturbing. The admiral opened the journal to a page he had clearly read many times before. Listen to this entry. Dated March 6, 1918, 2 days after the Cyclops was last heard from. The compass is useless. The stars are wrong. The men speak of ghosts on the deck, but I know better. They are seeing glimpses of themselves in different times. Reality is thin here. I fear we have crossed some threshold never meant for human passage. Ray felt a chill run down his spine at the words written over a century ago. He's describing some kind of... What? A tear in space-time? That's one interpretation, Harris said carefully. The scientific terminology has evolved over the decades, but the phenomenon appears consistent localized areas where the normal laws of physics become temporarily flexible. Listen to his final entry, Caldwell continued, turning to the last written page. March 9, 1918, I alone remain on the bridge. The others have succumbed to madness or fled to lower decks. The ship exists in multiple states simultaneously. I can see through the hull to something beyond normal space. I have secured the artifact in the lead container as instructed, but its effect continues. I fear we have been used as unwitting transporters of something that should never have been removed from its resting place. May God forgive us for what we have unleashed. Artifact? Ray asked, immediately making the connection to the sphere. Is he talking about this? Harris and Caldwell exchanged glances. We believe so, Harris confirmed. But Mercer's journal doesn't explain where it came from originally, only that they were transporting it under classified orders. This doesn't make sense, Ray said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. If the Cyclops disappeared in 1918, how did this journal end up in a compartment on a submarine that wasn't even built until decades later? And how did they recover these objects from a ship that was never found? Caldwell closed the journal carefully. In 1945, as I mentioned earlier, my submarine detected an anomalous sonar reading. What I didn't tell you was that when we investigated, we briefly made physical contact with a section of the Cyclops, a ship that had disappeared 27 years earlier. During that brief interaction, a small team boarded and recovered these items before the ship phased out again. Phased out? Ray repeated incredulously. Disappeared, Harris clarified. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't, but not like something sinking or exploding. More like a television being turned off. Just gone. The implications were staggering. Ray stared at the items spread before him, physical evidence of something that defied conventional understanding of reality. So the Bermuda Triangle is potentially a region where the fabric of spacetime has been compromised, Caldwell finished for him. The Navy has been monitoring it secretly for generations, passing the responsibility from one submarine crew to another, because submarines are uniquely positioned to observe the anomalies without civilian awareness. And now you're seeing an increase in activity, Ray said, remembering their earlier statement. What exactly does that mean? Harris opened another folder, this one containing more recent data printouts. Over the past 6 months, we've recorded a 300% increase in anomalous readings throughout the region. The pattern suggests a building resonance effect, as if the distortions are amplifying each other. The civilian vessels that disappeared recently, Caldwell added, vanished in locations that perfectly match the expanding pattern. If the progression continues at the current rate. He didn't need to finish the sentence. The implication was clear. What do you think is causing it? Ray asked, already mentally analyzing the problem as he would a complex mechanical system. That's what we need to find out, Harris replied. And quickly. Which is why we need your help, Mitchell. Ray looked between the two naval officers, understanding now why they had brought him into their confidence. You want me to… What? Study the data? Try to find a pattern you've missed? Partly, Harris acknowledged. But more importantly, we need someone to go there. Someone who can recognize and potentially understand the technical aspects of what's happening. You want me to go into the Bermuda Triangle? Ray asked, unable to keep the incredulity from his voice. Where ships and planes have been disappearing for a century. Not alone, Caldwell assured him. There's a research vessel, officially conducting oceanographic studies for Woods Hole. In reality, it's a Navy-funded operation with state-of-the-art monitoring equipment. They've agreed to take on a mechanical consultant to help with some equipment issues. The ship is positioned near the edge of the active zone, Harris explained. They've been recording data but maintaining a safe distance from the most intense anomalies. With your submarine experience, you'd be uniquely qualified to help them interpret what they're seeing and potentially develop a more complete understanding of the mechanism behind it. Ray stood up, needing to move as his mind processed everything he'd learned in the past hour. He walked to the window, watching the storm lash the coastline. The rational part of his brain, the engineer who believed in measurable, quantifiable reality, wanted to dismiss everything he'd heard as an elaborate hoax or misinterpretation of natural phenomena. But the evidence was literally sitting on the table behind him. "If this is real," he said finally, turning back to face the two officers, "and if there's really some kind of space-time anomaly that's growing, what exactly do you expect me to do about it?" "I'm a mechanical engineer, not a physicist." "Sometimes fresh eyes see what experts miss," Caldwell replied. "You have a unique combination of technical knowledge, practical experience, and now, awareness of the historical context. We need someone who can look at this problem holistically. And someone without official ties to the Navy," Harris added. "If this escalates, there may be institutional resistance to acknowledging the situation. Having an independent voice could be crucial." Ray thought about his current situation, his Navy career ending, no firm plans for the future, his personal life in disarray after the divorce. In a strange way, this bizarre mission offered something he'd been lacking: a purpose, a problem that needed solving. "When would I leave?" he asked, the question itself signaling a tentative acceptance. "Tomorrow," Harris replied promptly. "The research vessel the Horizon is already on station. They're expecting you to join them as soon as possible." "That's immediate," Ray said, surprised by the urgency. "We don't believe there's much time," Caldwell stated grimly. "The pattern acceleration suggests we may be approaching some kind of threshold event." Ray nodded slowly, making his decision. "I'll need to review everything you have. All the historical data, the recent measurements, everything about this sphere, and the water samples." "Of course," Harris agreed, relief evident in his voice. "We've prepared comprehensive briefing materials." He reached into his bag and produced a laptop. "This contains everything we know, including digitized versions of all historical records. It's air-gapped, no internet connectivity, and secured with biometric locks keyed to your fingerprints." Ray raised an eyebrow at this level of security, but after what he'd learned today, it seemed almost reasonable. "And the physical evidence? The sphere, the samples?" "Will be transferred to the Horizon," Caldwell assured him. "They have appropriate containment facilities. You'll have full access once you're aboard." As the storm continued to rage outside, Ray spent the next several hours immersing himself in decades of classified research. The laptop contained thousands of file sensor readings, witness accounts, theoretical analyses, and classified reports stretching back to World War II. Harris and Caldwell remained with him, answering questions and providing context for the more obscure references. What emerged was a picture more complex and disturbing than anything Ray could have imagined. The Bermuda Triangle wasn't just a location of mysterious disappearances. It appeared to be an area where the fundamental constants of reality, time, space, matter, energy became temporarily malleable. The Navy had documented instances of time dilation, spatial distortion, and even more bizarre phenomena like partial phase shifting, where objects existed simultaneously in multiple states. Most concerning were the recent readings that showed these anomalies increasing in both frequency and intensity. The pattern, when mapped over time, showed a clear acceleration that pointed toward some kind of culmination event in the near future. "This is beyond anything I've ever encountered," Ray admitted as he closed the laptop shortly after midnight. The storm had finally begun to subside, the wind dropping to a more moderate howl. "I'm not sure I'm qualified for this." "None of us are qualified," Harris said with unexpected frankness. "We're dealing with phenomena that may be beyond current human understanding. But someone has to try." Caldwell, who had been silent for some time, leaned forward with the intensity of a much younger man. "Mitchell, I've been involved with this mystery since 1945. I've watched good men struggle to comprehend what we're facing. I've seen careers ended for pushing too hard for official recognition of the anomalies. This may be our last chance to understand what's happening before it escalates beyond our ability to respond." Ray nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. "I'll do what I can. But I need to be clear about something. If I discover that this poses a genuine threat to civilian populations, I won't keep that information buried, regardless of official policy." Instead of the resistance he expected, both officers nodded in agreement. "That's precisely why we chose you," Harris said quietly. "The old approach of absolute secrecy may no longer be viable if we're facing what the data suggests." With plans made for Ray to board a Navy helicopter in the morning for transport to the research vessel, he left the beachfront cottage with the secured laptop and a head full of information that had fundamentally altered his understanding of reality. The drive back to his apartment near the shipyard gave him time to reflect on the extraordinary turn his life had taken in just one day. As he packed a bag with the essentials for an extended voyage, Ray found himself drawn to a photograph on his bedroom dresser, himself with his teenage daughter, Sophie, taken during her visit last summer. They were standing on the deck of a tourist boat, the ocean stretching endlessly behind them, both smiling despite the awkwardness that had characterized much of that visit. The distance between them wasn't just the physical separation caused by his deployments and the divorce. It was the gulf of understanding that had grown as Sophie entered adolescence, and Ray remained absorbed in his naval career. He picked up the photograph, struck by the irony that he was about to embark on a mission to investigate distortions in the fabric of reality when he couldn't even bridge the gap with his own daughter. On impulse, he reached for his phone and dialed Sophie's number, not expecting her to answer given the late hour. To his surprise, she picked up on the third ring. "Dad?" Her voice held the wariness that had become standard in their conversations. "It's past midnight here." "I know, honey." "I'm sorry," Ray said, suddenly unsure what to say now that he had her on the line. How do you tell your estranged daughter that you're about to sail into a zone of space-time anomalies that might represent an existential threat? I'm about to go on a research trip. I'll be at sea for a while, and I wanted to check in before I left." "A research trip?" Sophie sounded surprised. "I thought you were finishing up with the submarine decommissioning. This is something different. A special assignment." Ray paused, then added, "It's important work, Sophie. Maybe the most important thing I've ever done." There was silence on the line for a moment. "Is it dangerous?" she finally asked, a hint of concern breaking through her usual teenage detachment. Ray considered lying, then thought better of it. Their relationship had enough barriers without adding dishonesty. "I don't know," he admitted. "It might be. But I'm the right person for this job, and it matters. I can't explain why right now, but it does." Another pause, longer this time. "Dad, are you okay? You sound different." Ray smiled despite himself. His daughter had always been perceptive. "I'm fine, just perspective changes sometimes, you know. Things that seemed important yesterday look different today." "Like what?" she asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "Like time," Ray replied, thinking of the journal entries describing temporal distortions. "We assume it's constant, that it always flows the same way, but maybe that's not always true. Maybe we need to make the most of the time we have." "That's unexpectedly philosophical for you, Dad," Sophie said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Ray laughed softly. "Yeah, well, I'm capable of depth occasionally." He grew serious again. "Listen, Sophie, when I get back, I'd like us to spend some real time together. Not just a weekend visit with scheduled activities. Real time." The warmth in his daughter's response caught him by surprise. "I'd like that too, Dad, just Come back safely, okay? That's the plan, Ray assured her, feeling a renewed determination. I'll call when I can. After saying goodbye, Ray finished packing, including the photograph of himself and Sophie. Whatever he was about to face in the Bermuda Triangle, he now had one more reason to ensure he returned, a relationship that deserved the chance to heal. Early the next morning, a Navy helicopter transported Ray to the research vessel Horizon, positioned approximately 50 miles northeast of the Bahamas. From the air, the ship appeared to be a standard oceanographic research vessel, its white hull gleaming in the morning sun. Only upon closer approach did Ray notice the unusual array of antennas and sensor equipment that distinguished it from typical research ships. As the helicopter settled onto the small landing pad at the stern, Ray caught his first glimpse of the team he would be joining, a mixed group of civilians and what his experienced eye recognized as Navy personnel in civilian clothing. Standing apart from the others was a woman whose bearing immediately identified her as the person in charge, despite her casual attire of khaki pants and a blue windbreaker. After the helicopter departed, Ray approached with his duffel bag slung over his shoulder and the secure laptop case firmly in his grip. The woman stepped forward to meet him, extending her hand. Dr. Eliza Cortez, she introduced herself, her firm handshake and direct gaze assessing him openly. Chief Scientist and Mission Director. You must be Mitchell. Ray Mitchell, he confirmed. Thanks for accommodating me on such short notice. Dr. Cortez nodded briskly. Commander Harris spoke highly of your mechanical expertise. We certainly have some equipment issues that could benefit from a submarine engineer's perspective. Her tone made it clear that this was the official explanation for any listening ears, though her knowing look conveyed understanding of his real purpose. Happy to help however I can, Ray replied, falling into the established narrative. Let's get you settled, and then I'll show you what we're dealing with, she suggested, leading him toward the ship's main structure. We've assigned you a cabin on the lower deck. It's not spacious, but it's private. I understand you have materials to review. As they walked, Ray took stock of the vessel and its operations. The Horizon appeared to be a converted Navy oceanographic ship, roughly 250 feet in length, with laboratories and research facilities occupying most of the superstructure. Crew and scientists moved purposefully around the deck, attending to equipment and monitoring systems. Despite the civilian appearance, Ray noted the precision and discipline that spoke of military training. How many people aboard? He asked as they descended a stairwell into the living quarters. 27, Dr. Cortez replied. 12 crew members, 15 research personnel. Most have some Navy background, though we maintain civilian cover for obvious reasons. Ray's assigned cabin was indeed small but efficiently arranged, with a bunk, desk, storage lockers, and a tiny private bathroom luxury by submarine standards. After depositing his bag, he followed Dr. Cortez to what she called the primary research lab on the main deck. As the door slid open, Ray found himself entering a space that reminded him more of a submarine control room than a traditional scientific laboratory. Multiple monitoring stations lined the walls, each attended by focused technicians tracking different data streams. The center of the room was dominated by a large holographic display showing a three-dimensional map of the ocean region they were studying, with swirling patterns of color indicating various measured phenomena. Welcome to the Nerve Center, Dr. Cortez said, a hint of pride in her voice. From here, we monitor everything happening within a 100-mile radius conventional metrics like weather, currents, and marine activity, but also the more unconventional readings we're primarily interested in. Ray approached the holographic display, immediately noting the irregular patterns concentrated in an area approximately 30 miles to the southeast of their position. Those are the anomalies? Dr. Cortez nodded, tapping a control panel that zoomed in on the region in question. We're recording distortions in magnetic fields, gravitational inconsistencies, Radiation spikes that don't match any known pattern, and occasionally, something we've termed temporal echoes, brief readings that appear to indicate the same event, occurring multiple times in slightly different configurations. The display shifted to show a time-lapse of the past week's readings. Ray watched as the patterns expanded and contracted in a rhythmic fashion that seemed almost organic, like a breathing entity. More concerning was the clear trend toward expansion, each cycle reaching slightly further than the previous one. "It's growing," Ray observed, stating the obvious. "Yes," Dr. Cortez confirmed grimly. "And accelerating. Based on current progression, we estimate it will reach a critical threshold within 72 hours. What happens then?" She left the sentence unfinished, but her expression conveyed serious concern. "And you have no idea what's causing it?" Ray asked, studying the patterns more carefully. "Theories, but no certainty," she replied. "That's why we requested someone with your background. We need fresh perspective." Ray nodded, his mind already working on the problem. "I'm going to need everything you've recorded, especially any patterns in how the anomalies respond to external stimuli. And I understand you'll be receiving some physical evidence that I need to examine as well." "The special cargo is already here," Dr. Cortez said quietly. "Arrived by separate transport this morning. It's secured in our containment lab." She checked her watch. "We have a full briefing scheduled in 1 hour. That should give you time to settle in and prepare." As Dr. Cortez left to attend to other matters, Ray remained at the holographic display, watching the swirling patterns of anomalous energy. Somewhere within that colorful representation of data was the key to understanding what was happening in the Bermuda Triangle and potentially to preventing whatever catastrophic event might be approaching. With renewed determination, he began studying the readings, looking for patterns that others might have missed, fully aware that the clock was ticking on whatever mysterious threshold lay ahead. The briefing room aboard the Horizon was crowded with personnel when Ray arrived. Scientists, technicians, and what he now recognized as disguised naval officers filled the space, creating a buzz of conversation that immediately ceased when Dr. Cortez entered. She moved to the front of the room with the confident authority of someone accustomed to command, activating a large display screen with a casual gesture. "As most of you know, we have a new team member," she announced, nodding toward Ray. "Ray Mitchell, mechanical engineering specialist, formerly of the USS Barracuda. He'll be helping us address some of our equipment challenges and bringing a fresh perspective to our ongoing research." The gathered personnel nodded in acknowledgement, though Ray noticed several exchanging knowing glances. Clearly, most of the core team understood his true purpose aboard the Horizon. "Now let's review our current situation," Dr. Cortez continued, bringing up a series of data visualizations on the main screen. "The anomalous zone has expanded another 2–3% since yesterday's briefing. The pattern remains consistent with our projections, which puts us on track for threshold event in approximately 68 hours. A murmur ran through the assembled group. Ray studied the data, noting the increasing intensity represented in vivid reds and oranges at the center of the mapped anomaly. "Dr. Levine, please update us on the gravitational readings," Dr. Cortez requested, yielding the floor to a thin man with prematurely gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Dr. Levine stepped forward, pulling up a different set of visualizations. "We're seeing increasingly significant gravitational fluctuations within the core zone. Standard deviation has increased by a factor of 3 in the past 24 hours. More concerning is the periodicity. The fluctuations are occurring in a clearly non-random pattern." He highlighted a waveform display that showed regular peaks and valleys. "This suggests an underlying mechanism rather than a natural phenomenon. Almost like a machine," Ray finished for him, seeing the pattern clearly. Every submarine engineer recognized the signature of mechanical systems, the rhythmic fluctuations that, Distinguish deliberate processes from random events. Dr. Levine looked at Ray with newfound interest. Exactly. Something within the anomaly zone is functioning in a systematic way. Or someone is operating it, suggested a woman near the back of the room. The security officer, Ray presumed from her posture and watchful eyes. Dr. Cortez retook control of the briefing. We don't have enough data to determine intent or origin. What we do know is that the pattern is accelerating toward what our models predict will be some kind of culmination event. She turned to face Ray directly. Mitchell, you've reviewed the historical data. Do you see any correlations with previous incidents? Ray considered the question carefully. The pattern resembles what was recorded during the 1976 event when that research vessel encountered parts of the Cyclops, but at a much larger scale. It's as if the same mechanism is operating, but with significantly more power behind it. That aligns with our assessment, Dr. Cortez agreed. Which brings us to our next steps. We need more direct data from within the anomaly zone. The announcement sent another ripple of unease through the room. Ray understood why gathering data from within the zone meant risking direct exposure to whatever was causing vessels to disappear. We've modified one of our unmanned submersibles with enhanced shielding and redundant data transmission systems, Dr. Cortez explained, bringing up schematics of a torpedo-shaped vehicle. The plan is to send it into the periphery of the zone to gather readings that our ship-based sensors can't capture. Ray studied the submersible design with professional interest. It was clearly based on a Navy reconnaissance drone, but with significant modifications. What's the power source? He asked, noting unusual components in the schematic. Isolated nuclear battery, replied a younger man whom Ray hadn't noticed before. He stood up, moving toward the front with the enthusiasm of someone passionate about his work. I'm Dr. Chris Reeves, engineering lead. The battery is specifically designed to maintain operation, even if exposed to electromagnetic interference or temporal distortion. Dr. Cortez nodded. Mitchell, given your submarine engineering experience, we'd like you to work with Dr. Reeves on final preparations for the drone mission. Your practical knowledge of deep-sea operations could be valuable. Of course, Ray agreed, already seeing potential improvements to the submersible's design. When is the mission scheduled? Tomorrow morning, Dr. Cortez replied, which gives you approximately 18 hours to review the systems and suggest any modifications you think necessary. The briefing concluded with assignments for various team members and a detailed schedule for the upcoming drone mission. As the room cleared, Dr. Reeves approached Ray with obvious interest. Commander Harris said you were the best mechanical troubleshooter in the submarine fleet, the younger man said. I'd love to get your input on our drone's propulsion system. We've been having issues with stability under certain conditions. Ray smiled at the engineer's enthusiasm. Happy to help. But first, I understand there are some artifacts I need to examine? Dr. Reeves's expression grew more serious. Yes, the special items. They're in the secure lab. Dr. Cortez said I should give you full access when you're ready. I'm ready now, Ray decided. The sooner he understood all aspects of the situation, the better. The secure laboratory was located in the lowest level of the ship, a windowless space with reinforced walls and multiple security measures controlling access. Inside, Ray found a pristine research environment with advanced analytical equipment surrounding a central work area. And there, in a specially designed containment unit, sat the mysterious metal case he had retrieved from the Barracuda. The artifacts were transferred early this morning, Dr. Reeves explained as he completed the security protocols to open the containment unit. Only 4 people on board have clearance to access them, including you. Ray approached the case, now open to reveal its extraordinary contents. The strange spherical object occupied a central position, still exhibiting its unusual iridescent sheen. The water samples were secured in a temperature-controlled section, Their unusual properties apparent even through the glass vials. Have you analyzed these before? Ray asked, carefully lifting one of the vials containing seawater with a faint blue luminescence. Dr. Reeves shook his head. Not personally. There's a complete file of previous analyses, but Dr. Cortez thought it would be valuable to have fresh examinations without preconceived expectations. Ray set down the vial and turned his attention to the sphere, the most enigmatic of the artifacts. He lifted it carefully, again struck by its unexpected lightness and the subtle vibration against his fingertips. What do you feel? Dr. Reeves asked, watching intently. A vibration, like something inside is in constant motion, Ray replied, turning the object slowly in his hands. But there's something else. A kind of resonance. As he held the sphere, Ray became aware of an unusual sensation, almost like a faint humming that he felt rather than heard. A vibration that seemed to connect directly with his nervous system, rather than through normal sensory channels. That's consistent with previous reports, Dr. Reeves confirmed. People who handle it often describe sensations that don't correspond to normal tactile or auditory stimuli. Ray placed the sphere on the laboratory table and turned to the advanced analytical equipment surrounding them. I'd like to run some test spectrographic analysis, density measurements, vibration patterns. Can you help me set up the equipment? For the next several hours, Ray and Dr. Reeves subjected the mysterious sphere to every non-invasive test the ship's laboratory could provide. The results were as baffling as they were fascinating. The object's composition defied conventional materials analysis. Its density seemed to fluctuate depending on the testing method used, and most strangely, its vibration pattern exactly matched the waveform they had observed in the gravitational fluctuations at the center of the anomaly zone. This can't be coincidence, Ray said, comparing the two patterns side by side on the laboratory display. The sphere is somehow connected to whatever's happening out there. Or it's responding to it, Dr. Reeves suggested. Like a tuning fork resonating with a specific frequency. Ray considered this possibility. If that's the case, then the sphere might be more than just an artifact. It could be a key to understanding the mechanism behind the anomalies. Their discussion was interrupted when the laboratory door opened to admit Dr. Cortez, her expression serious. Mitchell, we have a development. The anomaly zone has accelerated its expansion. We're now looking at a threshold event in less than 48 hours. That's a significant acceleration, Ray noted with concern. What triggered it? Unknown, Dr. Cortez replied. But it happened approximately 30 minutes ago, right around the time you began your tests on the sphere. The implication hung in the air between them. Ray glanced at the object sitting innocuously on the laboratory table. You think our tests affected the anomaly zone? It's a working hypothesis, Dr. Cortez acknowledged, which makes your work here even more crucial. If the sphere is indeed connected to the phenomena, it might provide insights into how to address it. Or it might make things worse, Ray pointed out, the responsibility of their situation weighing heavily upon him. Dr. Cortez nodded grimly. That's the risk we're facing. But standing by and doing nothing isn't an option if these anomalies continue to grow at the current rate. She approached the laboratory table, studying the sphere with open curiosity. Have you made any progress understanding it? Some, Ray replied, bringing up the matching waveform patterns on the display. The sphere's internal vibration pattern exactly matches the gravitational fluctuations in the anomaly zone. They're operating at the same frequency, with identical amplitude variations. Dr. Cortez studied the patterns, her scientific training evident in her focused analysis. This confirms a connection, but doesn't tell us the nature of that connection. Is the sphere causing the anomalies, responding to them, or are both being affected by some third factor? We need more data, Ray concluded. Direct measurements from within the anomaly zone. Which brings us back to tomorrow's drone mission, Dr. Cortez agreed. I've accelerated the timetable. We launch in 6 hours. With the new urgency, Ray and Dr. Reeves shifted their focus to preparing the unmanned submersible for its mission into the heart of the Bermuda Triangle's mysterious anomaly zone. Ray's submarine experience proved invaluable as they fine-tuned the drone's systems for the extreme conditions it might encounter. The main propulsion system should be able to handle spatial distortions, up to 15% variance, Dr. Reeves explained as they worked. Beyond that, we've added emergency thrusters that operate on a completely independent circuit. Ray examined the drone's navigation system, making several adjustments to the backup gyroscopic compass. If the anomaly affects magnetic fields the way the historical data suggests, the standard compass will be useless. This mechanical backup should continue functioning unless the actual laws of physics change, which, according to some of the witness accounts, is exactly what happens in the Triangle, Dr. Reeves noted with a nervous laugh. As they completed final preparations, Ray found himself impressed with the young engineers' work. Despite the extraordinary nature of their mission, Dr. Reeves maintained the meticulous attention to detail that characterized the best engineers. Ray had worked within the Navy. "You've done remarkable work here," Ray acknowledged as they ran final diagnostics on the drone. "This isn't standard oceanographic equipment." Dr. Reeves smiled slightly. "I was recruited specifically for this project 3 years ago." Ray studied the drone's trajectory and power consumption curve. "It's going to make it," he concluded. But just barely. When the drone finally crossed back into normal space, a collective sigh of relief went through the laboratory. Recovery teams were dispatched to retrieve the vehicle, which now floated on the surface approximately half a mile from the horizon, its batteries completely depleted after the grueling mission. As the drone was brought aboard and secured, Ray joined Dr. Cortez and the senior research team in the Data Analysis Center, where technicians were already processing the extraordinary information gathered during the mission. "We have confirmation," announced the lead data analyst, bringing up multiple visualizations on the main display. The drone recorded the presence of at least 17 distinct vessels within the surveyed area of the anomaly zone, all in various states of phase shifting between our reality and something else. "And the Cyclops?" Dr. Cortez asked. "Positively identified," confirmed the analyst. "Hull markings and configuration match historical records. But here's the truly extraordinary part: spectroscopic analysis of the metal suggests that parts of the ship are physically aging at different rates. Some sections show corrosion consistent with over a century in seawater, while others appear nearly new." Ray examined the complex data sets, his mind racing to connect what they had discovered with the historical records and the mysterious artifacts from the case. One correlation immediately stood out: the energy signature surrounding the vessels in the anomaly zone matched exactly the vibration pattern they had measured from the sphere. "It's all connected," he said, drawing the attention of the senior researchers. "The sphere, the anomaly zone, the disappearances, they're all manifestations of the same phenomenon. And based on what we just saw, I think I understand what the Triangle actually is." Dr. Cortez turned to him with intense interest. "What's your theory?" "It's not just a region where ships disappear," Ray explained, the pieces falling into place in his mind. "It's a nexus point where multiple time streams intersect, a place where objects and people can slip between different versions of reality." As the implications of his theory sank in, the atmosphere in the room shifted from scientific curiosity to something approaching awe and fear. If Ray was correct, they were facing something far more significant than a localized maritime hazard. They were standing at the edge of a fundamental tier in the fabric of reality itself, one that was growing more unstable by the hour. "And if that's true," Dr. Cortez said slowly, "then the threshold event our models are projecting in less than 36 hours could be a catastrophic collapse of the barriers between multiple realities, Ray finished for her, the full weight of their situation settling over him like a physical force. We need to understand the mechanism, and quickly. Ray stood at the center of a hastily assembled crisis meeting in the Horizon's main briefing room. Around the conference table sat the ship's senior scientists and researchers, their expressions a mix of fascination and grave concern. Behind them, junior staff worked at various monitoring stations, tracking the ever-expanding anomaly zone. "Let me make sure I understand what you're proposing," Dr. Cortez said, leaning forward intently. "You believe the mysterious sphere is connected to whatever mechanism is creating these reality distortions?" Ray nodded, organizing his thoughts before responding. "The evidence is compelling. The sphere's energy signature perfectly matches the patterns we observed in the anomaly zone. Captain Mercer's journal specifically mentions an artifact that was being transported on the Cyclops, which he believed was somehow responsible for what happened to the ship. He projected a series of images onto the main display, comparative waveforms showing the matching signatures, excerpts from Mercer's journal, and data from the drone mission. Look at the temporal distortion readings from the drone," Ray continued. "The pattern isn't random, it's structured, almost like a code or language. And it matches exactly the vibration patterns we measured from the sphere." Dr. Levine, the physicist, studied the patterns with evident fascination. "You're suggesting the sphere is what? A key? A control device? Or a fragment of something larger?" Ray proposed. "Notice how the energy fields in the anomaly zone seem to be reaching outward, searching. What if they're trying to reconnect with the sphere?" The implication hung heavily in the air. Dr. Cortez was the first to vocalize it. "You think the threshold event our models are predicting is an attempt at reunification," Ray finished. "And based on the increasing intensity, it's not going to be gentle." Dr. Reeves looked troubled. "If you're right, then keeping the sphere here close to the anomaly zone might be accelerating the process." "That's my suspicion," Ray agreed. "The closer the sphere is to the zone, the stronger the connection becomes, which explains why the expansion has accelerated since we brought it aboard. So we need to move it further away," Dr. Cortez concluded. "Get it as far from the triangle as possible." "I'm not convinced that would solve the problem," Ray countered. "The connection appears to transcend normal spatial limitations. Remember, this sphere has been kept in submarines traveling worldwide for decades, yet the triangle anomalies persisted." "Then what do you suggest?" asked the security officer who had remained mostly silent until now. Ray took a deep breath, knowing his proposal would sound radical. "I think we need to return the sphere to where it belongs." "You mean?" Dr. Cortez began, her eyes widening. "Yes, into the anomaly zone itself specifically, to whatever remains of the Cyclops. The drone footage showed it still exists in some form. I believe the sphere was separated from some larger mechanism aboard that ship, and the distortions we're seeing are the result of that separation." The room erupted in overlapping voices as the implications of Ray's suggestion registered. Dr. Levine raised his hands for silence. "If you're correct," the physicist said when the room quieted, "returning the sphere might stabilize the anomalies. But it could also trigger an immediate catastrophic event. There's no way to predict the outcome." "Which is why I'll take it myself," Ray stated firmly. His declaration brought stunned silence to the room. Dr. Cortez recovered first. "That's out of the question. The risk is unacceptable." "The risk of doing nothing is greater," Ray countered. "Our models show the threshold event occurring in less than 30 hours. If that happens without intervention, the consequences could affect the entire eastern seaboard. We're talking about potentially millions of lives." "Even if we agreed to this plan," the security officer interjected, "how would you even reach the Cyclops? The drone barely made it out, and it's a purpose-built machine without life support requirements." Ray had been considering this problem since analyzing the drone data. "The ship maintains a deep-sea submersible for research purposes, correct?" I've reviewed its specifications. With some modifications, it could make the journey. Dr. Reeves looked skeptical. The research submersible isn't designed for those kinds of conditions. The electrical systems would be vulnerable to the same power drain the drone experienced. Which is why we need to modify it, Ray explained. I spent 6 years keeping submarine systems operational under extreme conditions. With your help, Dr. Reeves, we can reconfigure the submersible to withstand the anomaly's effects long enough to complete the mission. The discussion continued for hours, arguments for and against the plan growing increasingly technical. Ray maintained his position with the steady determination that had characterized his naval career, solving problems methodically, addressing concerns with practical solutions, refusing to accept that any technical challenge was insurmountable. Finally, Dr. Cortez called for a decision. We need to inform Naval Command of our situation and recommendations. They'll make the final determination. There isn't time, Ray argued. By the time we explain the situation, receive authorization, and implement whatever plan they approve, we'll be past the threshold point. We need to act now, based on the best information available to us, which is right here, in this room. Dr. Cortez studied him for a long moment, her scientific caution warring with the recognition of their desperate timeline. You understand what you're volunteering for. The chances of returning from this mission are minimal, Ray nodded solemnly. I understand. But someone has to try. After another moment of silence, Dr. Cortez made her decision. We'll prepare the submersible. Dr. Reeves will coordinate the modifications. But Naval Command will be informed of our actions. I won't keep them in the dark, even if we're proceeding before formal approval. As the meeting broke up, with various team members hurrying to their assignments, Ray found himself momentarily alone. The weight of what he had just volunteered for settled on his shoulders, a mission into the heart of a phenomenon that had swallowed ships and aircraft for centuries, with only the slimmest chance of return. He took out his phone and looked at the photograph of himself and his daughter Sophie that he had saved as his background image. The promise he had made to spend real time with her when he returned now seemed like a cruel irony. Yet paradoxically, it was thoughts of Sophie that strengthened his resolve. Whatever the triangle anomaly represented, it threatened far more than just passing vessels. If the threshold event occurred as their models predicted, the consequences could be devastating on a scale that would certainly reach California and his daughter. Making a difficult decision, Ray dialed Sophie's number. It was early morning on the West Coast, but he couldn't embark on this mission without speaking to her one more time. Dad? Her sleepy voice answered after several rings. Is everything okay? It's like 5 in the morning here. Everything's fine, honey, Ray lied, trying to keep his tone casual. Sorry about the time difference. I just wanted to check in before my shift starts. The research vessel keeps us pretty busy. Oh, there was a pause, and Ray could almost see her suspicion at this uncharacteristic call. How's it going? Finding anything interesting in the ocean? More than we expected, Ray admitted truthfully. Listen, Sophie. I meant what I said before about us spending real time together when I get back. I've been thinking a lot about the future, about what really matters. Something in his voice must have conveyed more than he intended, because Sophie's tone changed. Dad, what's going on? You're kind of freaking me out. Ray took a deep breath, carefully choosing his next words. Nothing's going on. It's just, sometimes you get perspective, you know? I've missed too much of your life because I was always deployed, always focused on the next mission. I don't want to make that mistake anymore. There was silence on the line for a moment. That's good, Dad. I'd like that too. I love you, Sophie, Ray said, the words coming out more urgently than he'd planned. No matter what happens, I want you to know that. Now you're definitely scaring me, Sophie replied, fully awake now. Are you in some kind of trouble? No trouble, Ray assured her. Just a father realizing he needs to say important things while he has the chance. I'll call you again soon, okay? After saying goodbye, Ray sat for a moment, composing himself. Then, with renewed determination, he headed to the ship's engineering bay where Dr. Reeves was already organizing the submersible modifications. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of intense activity. Ray and Dr. Reeves worked non-stop on modifying the research submersible, implementing every protective measure they could devise against the anomalous conditions in the triangle. We've reinforced the electrical systems with multiple redundancies, Dr. Reeves explained as they finalized the modifications. Added Faraday cage principles to the critical navigation components, isolated the life support from the main power grid, and installed mechanical backups for essential systems. Ray examined their work with a critical eye, applying his years of submarine experience to identify potential failure points. What about the temporal distortion effects? The drone data showed significant time dilation in the core zone. That's the one thing we can't really engineer against, Dr. Reeves admitted. Time itself becoming unstable is outside our design parameters. But we've installed a quantum-locked chronometer that should help you maintain awareness of subjective versus objective time passage. As they completed the final adjustments, Dr. Cortez joined them in the engineering bay, her expression grave. Naval Command has responded to our situation report. They're dispatching additional research vessels and a submarine with specialized equipment. ETA? Ray asked, not pausing in his work. Minimum 36 hours, she replied. Well past our projected threshold event. So we're proceeding as planned? Dr. Cortez nodded. We have provisional authorization for your mission, with the stipulation that it remains entirely voluntary. They wanted me to emphasize that no one would think less of you for declining. Ray smiled grimly. Noted, but nothing's changed. I'm going. The final preparation involves securing the mysterious sphere in a more specially designed container within the submersible. Dr. Levine had developed a theory that keeping it in a particular orientation relative to the triangle might minimize its interaction with the anomaly zone during the approach, potentially slowing the acceleration toward threshold. It's just a theory, the physicist cautioned as they positioned the sphere. Based on the polarization patterns we've observed in the energy fields. At this point, any edge helps, Ray acknowledged. On the eve of the mission, with the submersible ready for deployment at dawn, Ray found himself standing on the deck of the Horizon, gazing out at the deceptively calm waters that concealed one of the greatest mysteries on Earth. The night sky above was brilliantly clear, stars shining with remarkable intensity. Beautiful night, observed Dr. Cortez, joining him at the railing. Hard to believe what's happening beneath that peaceful surface. Ray nodded, appreciating the momentary calm. Maybe that's always the way with the universe's biggest secrets hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to look at them the right way. You know, Dr. Cortez said after a comfortable silence, I reviewed your service record when Commander Harris recommended you. 15 years of exemplary service, multiple commendations for engineering innovation under pressure, highest performance ratings from every commanding officer. She turned to look at him directly. But what stood out most was a note from your first submarine captain. Mitchell possesses a rare combination of technical brilliance and moral courage. When systems fail and options are limited, he's the one I want solving the problem. Ray felt a surge of unexpected emotion at hearing these words. That was Captain Delaney, first skipper I served under on the Memphis. Good man. He was right about you, Dr. Cortez said simply. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that. Dawn broke with a spectacular orange glow across the eastern horizon as final preparations for the mission were completed. The research team had gathered on the aft deck where the submersible was suspended above the launch bay, its systems running through final checks. Ray, dressed in a specialized pressure suit adapted from Navy deep diving equipment, completed his pre-mission briefing with Dr. Cortez and the senior scientists. Your primary objective is to locate the Cyclops and return the sphere to it, ideally to whatever mechanism or location it originated from, Dr. Cortez reiterated. If Captain Mercer's journal is accurate, there should be some kind of lead container or housing device. And if successful, our models suggest the reunification should stabilize the anomalies, Dr. Levine added. Though the process might involve a temporary surge in activity, which is why the horizon will maintain safe distance during the operation, Dr. Cortez emphasized. We'll continue monitoring from outside the expanding perimeter, but you'll be on your own once you enter the core zone. Ray nodded, accepting the isolation inherent in the mission. Understood. Continuous data transmission for as long as communications hold, then switch to recording for recovery later. Dr. Reeves approached with the final piece of equipment, a specially designed emergency beacon. This operates on multiple frequencies and includes a quantum entanglement module. If standard communications fail, this gives us the best chance of locating you for extraction. The unspoken, if extraction is possible, hung in the air between them. With final checks complete, Ray shook hands with the key team members before climbing into the submersible's cockpit. The compact vessel was state-of-the-art but cramped, with just enough room for one operator surrounded by control systems, life support equipment, and monitoring displays. Secured in a special compartment behind the pilot's position was the mysterious sphere, its iridescent surface occasionally catching the light as Ray made his final preparations. Submersible Diver 1, all systems check complete, came Dr. Reeves's voice through the communication system. Life support nominal, propulsion ready, navigation systems active. You are cleared for launch. Roger that, Ray responded, settling into the pilot's seat and securing his harness. Diver 1 ready for deployment. The launch sequence commenced with mechanical precision, the bay doors opening beneath the suspended submersible, revealing the dark Atlantic waters below. Ray felt the momentary weightlessness as the craft was lowered, then the gentle impact as it entered the water. When the release mechanism disengaged, the submersible became fully independent, floating just beneath the surface adjacent to the horizon. Communications check, Ray transmitted. How do you read? 5 by 5, confirmed the communications officer. Telemetry feed is strong and stable. Beginning mission, Ray announced, activating the submersible's main propulsion system. The quiet hum of electric motors filled the small cabin as the craft began moving forward, gradually descending to its operational depth of 600 feet. For the first hour, the journey was remarkably normal, a standard deep-sea excursion through calm waters. Ray maintained course toward the calculated center of the anomaly zone, monitoring the increasingly sophisticated sensor arrays for the first signs of unusual phenomena. Approaching anomaly perimeter in approximately 5 minutes, he reported. All systems functioning normally. No unusual readings yet. Roger, Diver 1, responded Dr. Cortez. Our sensors show the perimeter has expanded another 1.2% since yesterday. Adjust your entry point coordinates accordingly. Ray made the necessary adjustments to his navigation system, noting with professional detachment that the anomaly zone was growing faster than their previous models had predicted. The threshold event might be approaching even more rapidly than they feared. The first indication of entry into the anomaly zone was subtle, a slight fluctuation in the electrical systems that caused the cabin lights to dim momentarily before stabilizing. Then the navigation system began showing discrepancies, the standard compass readings diverging from the mechanical backup. I'm experiencing the first anomaly effects, Ray reported. Electrical fluctuations within tolerance, navigation showing expected interference. Switching to inertial guidance and mechanical backup. Confirmed, came Dr. Reeves's voice. We're recording the effects from here. Power consumption is increasing, but still within acceptable parameters. As Ray penetrated deeper into the zone, the effects intensified. The water outside the viewport began to exhibit unusual properties, occasional flashes of luminescence, strange distortions in visibility, and most disconcertingly, moments where it appeared to become less substantial, offering glimpses of impossible depths or structures that shouldn't exist at this location. Visual anomalies increasing, Ray reported, maintaining his professional tone despite the increasingly bizarre surroundings. Intermittent phase shifting in the environment, consistent with drone observations. The deeper he ventured, the more pronounced the effects became. The submersible's hull occasionally vibrated with unexplained resonances, and the sensor readings became increasingly erratic, showing impossible depth changes, temperature fluctuations that defied thermodynamics, and radiation patterns unlike anything in the standard spectrum. Nearly 2 hours into the mission, with communications becoming increasingly fragmented, Ray encountered the first solid evidence of the Cyclops. The submersible sonar detected a massive structure ahead, its profile matching the known dimensions of the vanished naval collier. "I have sonar contact," he transmitted, knowing his communications might not be getting through clearly. Profile consistent with Cyclops. Moving to visual confirmation. Maneuvering carefully through waters that seemed to resist normal hydrodynamics, Ray approached the massive silhouette. As he drew closer, the powerful exterior lights of the submersible illuminated an extraordinary sight, the hull of a massive ship, partially visible, partially transparent, seemingly existing in multiple states simultaneously. "Visual confirmation," Ray reported, his voice steady despite the awe he felt. "I am observing the USS Cyclops. Vessel appears to be in a state of partial phase shift, portions visible, portions transparent. No obvious structural damage, but the entire ship seems to be flickering in and out of our reality." He maneuvered the submersible around the ghostly vessel, searching for an entry point. The Cyclops floated in an impossible orientation, neither fully upright nor capsized, but in a state that defied normal physical positioning, as if the concept of up and down had become meaningless in this region. Behind Ray, secured in its specialized container, the mysterious sphere had begun vibrating more intensely, its iridescent surface shifting through colors more rapidly. The sensor monitoring its energy output showed increasing intensity, matching the patterns visible in the water surrounding the Cyclops. "The sphere is responding to proximity," Ray noted. "Energy output increasing substantially. I believe this confirms our reunification theory." As he circled the phantom ship, Ray identified what appeared to be an opening in the hull, a cargo hatch that fluctuated between solid and transparent states. It would be risky, but it offered the best chance to enter the vessel with the submersible. "I've identified a potential entry point," he reported, preparing to attempt access to the ship's interior. The response from the horizon was badly fragmented, only fragments of words coming through the increasing interference. Ray checked his instrument panels, noting with concern that power consumption had increased dramatically in the past few minutes. The special modifications were working, but the drain was accelerating faster than they had anticipated. "If you can hear this," he transmitted, "power drain accelerating. Proceeding with entry attempt before systems are compromised." With careful precision honed through years of submarine maneuvering in tight spaces, Ray guided the small submersible toward the fluctuating cargo hatch. Timing would be critical. He needed to pass through during a phase when the opening was sufficiently materialized to allow passage, yet not so solid as to damage the submersible. Watching the rhythm of the fluctuations, Ray identified a pattern and prepared to make his move. When the moment came, he advanced the propulsion to full power, driving the submersible forward into the shimmering opening. For a moment, reality itself seemed to distort around the craft. Ray felt a sensation unlike anything he had ever experienced, as if his body were simultaneously in multiple locations, experiencing multiple versions of the same moment. The viewport showed impossible visions, overlapping images of the ship's interior from different time periods, some pristine and new, others decayed and ancient. Then, with a sensation like passing through a membrane, the submersible emerged into the interior of the Cyclops. Ray found himself in what appeared to be a cargo hold, though the space defied normal dimensions. Parts of the hold appeared as it would have in 1918 when the ship disappeared, equipment neatly stowed, surfaces clean and maintained. Other sections showed advanced decay, metal corroded by a century in salt water. Still other portions seemed to flicker between these states, or showed configurations that made no logical sense. "I've entered the Cyclops," Ray reported, though he doubted his transmission would reach the horizon through the ship's hull and the anomaly effects. The interior exhibits the same phase shifting as the exterior, but more pronounced. Multiple temporal states visible simultaneously. The sphere was now vibrating so intensely that Ray could feel it through the deck plates of the submersible. Its energy signature had increased exponentially, and the container designed to hold it was beginning to show stress fractures from the vibrations. Following the increasing energy readings, Ray carefully maneuvered through the surreal interior of the ghost ship. Normal navigation was impossible, spaces connected in ways that defied conventional geometry, corridors sometimes leading to different destinations on consecutive attempts. After what seemed like hours, but might have been minutes according to the chronometer, Ray found himself approaching what appeared to be the ship's bridge, or rather, multiple overlapping versions of the bridge existing simultaneously. And there, at the center of the phantasmal space, was what he had been seeking, a device unlike anything he had ever seen, partially materialized in our reality. It resembled a complex mechanical apparatus built around a central housing that appeared perfectly sized for the sphere. Parts of the device glowed with the same iridescent quality as the sphere, while other sections appeared to extend into dimensions beyond normal perception, vanishing at angles that hurt the eye to follow. "I've located what appears to be the origin point for the sphere," Ray reported for his own records, certain now that no transmissions were reaching the horizon. "Some kind of mechanism or device that exists partially in our reality, partially elsewhere." The submersible's power levels had dropped to critical levels, the drain accelerating as he approached the mysterious device. Ray knew he had to act quickly before all systems failed. He secured his pressure suit, preparing for the most dangerous part of the mission, leaving the submersible to physically carry the sphere to the device. "Beginning EVA," he noted in the mission log. "Submersible power at 22% and falling rapidly. Attempting manual delivery of the artifact." The process of exiting the submersible while inside the phase-shifting environment of the Cyclops proved extraordinarily disorienting. The water around him seemed to vary in density and resistance, sometimes feeling nearly as light as air, other times pressing with crushing force against his pressure suit. The specialized helmet display flickered as the suit's system struggled against the anomalous conditions. With the sphere secured in a carrying case attached to his suit, Ray propelled himself toward the mysterious device at the center of the bridge. Movement followed unpredictable rules here. Sometimes a small effort sent him gliding far too quickly. Other times tremendous exertion produced minimal progress. As he approached the device, Ray experienced increasingly severe temporal distortions. His perception of time became unreliable, moments stretched to what seemed like hours, then compressed again to milliseconds. Through the fluctuations, he remained focused on his objective, fighting to maintain his sense of self and purpose. The device loomed before him now, its complex structure more alien than anything human technology could produce. At its center was an unmistakable receptacle, a space exactly matching the dimensions of the sphere, currently empty. Around this void, energy patterns swirled in configurations that seemed to bend inward from elsewhere, as if the device were a junction point between multiple realities. With trembling hands, Ray opened the carrying case and removed the sphere. The moment it was freed from its container, the vibrations intensified dramatically, and the sphere began to glow with blinding intensity. It seemed to pull toward the device with a force beyond normal gravity, as if the separation between them was an offense against some fundamental law of reality. Fighting against forces he couldn't comprehend, Ray carefully positioned the sphere at the edge of the receptacle. For a brief moment, he held it there, aware that he was at a pivotal moment, not just in his own life, but potentially in human history. Whatever this device was, whatever cosmic function it served, he was about to restore its missing component. For Sophie, he whispered inside his helmet. And for everyone else's children, too. With that final thought, Ray released the sphere. It slid into the receptacle with perfect precision, locking into place with a sensation rather than a sound, a feeling of rightness that resonated through the ship, through the water, through Ray himself. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Energy surged through the device, through the ship, through the entire anomaly zone. Ray was thrown backward by forces beyond measurement, tumbling through the phase-shifting environment as reality itself seemed to realign around the now complete mechanism. Through his tumbling, disoriented state, Ray glimpsed the transformation taking place. The multiple overlapping versions of the Cyclops were converging, temporal states resolving toward a single configuration. The phase shifting was stabilizing, the flickering between realities slowing and becoming more coherent. But the energy release was far more powerful than anyone had predicted. Ray's pressure suit systems fluctuated wildly, warnings flashing across his helmet display as critical failures cascaded through the life support systems. The suit's emergency protocols activated automatically, triggering the beacon Dr. Reeves had installed. As consciousness began to fade, Ray had one final, profound realization about the device, the sphere, and the Bermuda Triangle itself. They weren't accidents or anomalies, they were components of something vast and purposeful, a system designed to maintain the integrity of reality itself. The Cyclops hadn't been the victim of a mysterious disappearance. It had been transformed into a key component of this cosmic mechanism when it inadvertently discovered the sphere during its 1918 voyage. And now, with the missing component restored, balance was being re-established. The threshold event their models had predicted wasn't a catastrophe approaching. It was the system attempting to repair itself. His last conscious thought before darkness claimed him was a sense of profound accomplishment. Whatever happened to him now, he had completed his mission. The anomalies would stabilize. The threat would pass. Sophie and millions of others would continue their lives in a reality that remained intact, never knowing how close they had come to a cosmic unraveling. Aboard the Horizon, positioned at the maximum safe distance from the anomaly zone, Dr. Cortez and her team watched in awe as their instruments recorded an unprecedented surge of energy from the center of the triangle. The readings spiked beyond anything their equipment could measure, then began to stabilize in a pattern they had never observed before: coherent, harmonious, structured. "What's happening?" Dr. Cortez demanded as the ship's system struggled to interpret the new readings. Dr. Levine stared at the data in amazement. "It's stabilizing. The chaotic patterns are resolving into a coherent structure. The phase shifting is still occurring, but it's contained, controlled." "Mitchell did it," Dr. Reeves whispered, watching the energy pattern settle into a new equilibrium. "He restored the sphere to its origin point." "Any signal from the submersible?" Dr. Cortez asked the communications officer. "Any sign of Mitchell?" "Nothing clear," came the disappointing response. "Too much interference from the energy release." "Wait," the officer adjusted his equipment. "I'm picking up a faint signal from the emergency beacon. It's active, but the location data is impossible." "What do you mean impossible?" Dr. Cortez demanded. "It's showing multiple positions simultaneously," the officer explained, confusion evident in his voice. "As if the beacon exists in several locations at once." Dr. Cortez turned to Dr. Levine. Is extraction possible? The physicist studied the readings carefully. The anomaly zone has completely transformed. It's still there, but the characteristics have changed. It's no longer expanding, no longer building toward a threshold event. It's stable. He looked up, his expression a mixture of wonder and sorrow. But it's still a region where normal physical laws are compromised. Mounting a rescue operation would be extremely hazardous, possibly futile. Before Dr. Cortez could respond, the communications officer called out urgently. "Ma'am, Navy vessels approaching from the north. One destroyer, 2 research ships, and," he paused, checking his readings, "a submarine surfacing 2 miles east of our position." The reinforcements Harris had requested had finally arrived. Too late to prevent the crisis, but perhaps in time to help them understand what had happened, and possibly to attempt a rescue of the man who had saved them all. 3 days later, Ray Mitchell opened his eyes to bright fluorescent lights and the steady beep of medical monitoring equipment. His vision slowly focused to reveal a hospital room, not a civilian facility, but the unmistakable environment of a naval medical center. "Welcome back, Mitchell," said a familiar voice. Commander Harris sat in a chair beside the bed, looking tired but relieved. "You gave us quite a scare." Ray tried to speak, found his throat dry and raw. Harris offered him water, helping him take small sips until he could manage words. "How?" Ray rasped. "The submersible. The Cyclops." "That's a very long story," Harris replied. "One that naval intelligence and several scientific agencies are still trying to piece together. What we do know is that your emergency beacon activated during what our sensors recorded as a massive energy event within the triangle. When the energy pattern stabilized, a Navy submarine detected your beacon and found you floating in your pressure suit approximately 1 mile from where the Cyclops had been observed." "Had been?" Ray questioned, trying to process the information. Harris nodded. "The ship is gone, or rather, it's no longer detectable by any means we possess. Same with the other vessels that had been trapped in the anomaly zone. It's as if they've fully transitioned to wherever they were partially existing before." "The anomalies?" "Contained," Harris assured him. "The region still shows unusual characteristics, but they're stable, predictable, and no longer expanding. Whatever you did with that sphere, it worked." Ray absorbed this information slowly, memories of his experience aboard the ghostly Cyclops returning in fragments. The device. It was some kind of stabilizing mechanism. Not human technology. Harris nodded, unsurprised. "That aligns with certain theoretical models that have been proposed. The working hypothesis is that the triangle represents a naturally occurring thin point between dimensional boundaries. The device you found may have been established to maintain those boundaries, perhaps by the same non-human intelligence that created the sphere." The implications were staggering, but Ray found his thoughts turning to more immediate concerns. "How long have I been here?" 5 days, Harris replied. "You experienced severe temporal distortion effects. The medical team has been monitoring you carefully, but they don't fully understand what happened to you in there." Ray tried to sit up, found himself surprisingly weak. "My daughter has been notified that you're recovering from a diving accident during a research mission," Harris assured him. "In fact," he checked his watch, "she should be arriving within the hour. Flew in from San Diego yesterday." The news that Sophie was coming brought unexpected tears to Ray's eyes. Despite everything he had experienced, the cosmic mechanism, the phase-shifting reality, the profound understanding he had glimpsed about the nature of existence itself, it was the simple human connection that moved him most deeply. "Thank you," he managed. Harris stood, straightening his uniform. "No, Mitchell. Thank you. What you did, the risk you took, it saved countless lives. There will be medals, commendations, but they can't possibly convey the true magnitude of your service." He paused at the door. "I'll give you some time to rest before your daughter arrives. But when you're recovered, we have much to discuss about what you experienced in there." After Harris departed, Ray lay back, gazing out the window at a brilliant blue sky. The world continued as it always had, people going about their daily lives, entirely unaware of how close they had come to a cosmic catastrophe. Unaware, too, of the profound truth he had glimpsed within the triangle, that reality itself was more complex, more structured and more purposeful than humanity had ever imagined. But those were concerns for another day. For now he had kept his promise. He would see his daughter again. And this time, he would make the moments count. When Sophie arrived, hesitantly entering his hospital room with concern etched on her features, Ray felt a surge of gratitude so intense it nearly overwhelmed him. Whatever mysteries lay within the Bermuda Triangle, whatever cosmic forces had briefly made him part of their realignment, this simple human connection remained the most profound miracle of all. "Dad?" Sophie approached his bed, worry and relief mingling in her expression. "They said you had some kind of accident on your research ship." Ray smiled, reaching for her hand. "I did, but I'm okay now. And I've been thinking about that time we talked about spending together." His voice grew stronger with each word. "I'm thinking maybe we start with a trip to the Grand Canyon this summer. I've never seen it, and I hear it's the kind of place that gives you perspective on what really matters." The puzzled smile that spread across his daughter's face was, to Ray, more beautiful than all the cosmic wonders he had witnessed in the heart of the triangle. Some mysteries might never be fully understood, some experiences never fully explained, but the chance to rebuild this one precious relationship made every risk worthwhile. Outside the hospital window, the Atlantic stretched toward the horizon, its placid surface concealing the extraordinary mechanism that now functioned as it was meant to, maintaining the boundaries between realities, keeping the cosmic balance that allowed ordinary life to continue in blissful ignorance of how close it had come to unraveling. And somewhere within that vast ocean, the Bermuda Triangle continued its ancient vigil, its secrets now partly understood by the man who had journeyed to its heart and returned forever changed, but gratefully, wonderfully alive. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.